Okay, hello everyone, and welcome. Welcome to this third webinar that we are having today. I am Miriam Vilela. I'm very happy to already see some of familiar faces here. And so thank you really for joining us. I'm Miriam Vilela, Executive Director of the Earth Charter International and our Center on Education for Sustainable Development. And as I mentioned, this is our third webinar of this series that we are framing as East and West dialogue on ecological civilization. With this, we really want to generate a platform, a space for us just to exchange ideas on the meaning of ecological civilization. And specifically today, we want to focus on education. What are the implications of that to education? All the recordings of the past webinars, and including a series of 4 webinars that we had, we organized 3 years ago around the same theme, can be found on YouTube. And I see, and we see this webinar as part of, or maybe a sort of a kickoff start of our April conference on reimagining education for ecological civilizations, which is going to be a 3-day conference that will start actually exactly a month from now, on the 12th of April in Florida. And we are looking forward to it and really want to encourage you to use this as the beginning of our conversation, and encourage you, for those of you who can, to join us there. And these efforts we are organizing as part of our UNESCO chair on education for sustainable development with the Earth Charter. And for us, the idea of exploring what ecological civilization could look like and what it means really to have a kind of education that can help us foster that idea, that vision, emerged a year ago. That is how the theme of our April conference was put together. And with this, we have envisioned bringing together 4 emerging efforts and initiative. First is the initiative, or the fact that the government of China made a commitment and a call for China to contribute to the building of an ecological civilization. Second, we know that a number of individuals and organizations have been joining forces around this effort, and actually led, among other institutions, by the Institute of Ecological Civilization and John Cobb, that have been working with this concept for quite some time also. They have been working on this idea of ecological civilization and building a narrative around this. And the fact that many people and organizations have been working towards making ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, or Global Citizenship Education, or Environment Education, make it happen. We realize that these could be instruments to transform societies towards ecological civilizations. And lastly, because we want to collectively explore how the Earth Charter can serve as an ethical foundation for ecological civilizations. This webinar is organized as a collaborative effort between the Institute of Ecological Civilization, the Center for Process Studies, the Wellbeing Economic Alliance, WEAL, the Club of Rome, the Soka University in Japan, and thank you so much also for the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation, who's helping us to broadcast it live through Baidu. I want to thank each one of these organizations and also the speakers for joining us today. And we have 2 wonderful, very capable co-moderators that are going to take the lead now, Amanda Bennett and Sifan Jan. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miriam, and thank you everyone for joining us. I see that many of you have found the chat, so thank you for telling us where you're joining us from. It's good to see, despite the time difference, to see a great diversity of participants from different parts of the world. We have the United States, many cities, Jamaica, Japan, Connecticut, Guam, Washington, D.C. So thank you all for joining us. My name is Amanda Bennett, and I am joining you from the Earth Charter Education Center for Education for Sustainable Development in Costa Rica. And first, I am going to introduce our speakers. You can learn more about each of our panelists today on the website under this event page, but I will give a very brief introduction for each of them because they have done so much in around the concept of ecological civilizations and sustainability. So, but first I want to introduce Dr. Utak Chung, who is an adjunct professor of the Kyung-hee University, teaching global citizenship education and sustainable development goals. And he's also the representative of Korea for the Global Partnership for Education, or GPE. He is the former director of the UNESCO Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding, or APSEU. We're also joined by Dr. Maria Guajardo, a professor of leadership studies at Soka University in Japan, where she previously also served as dean and vice president. Her life's work is at the intersection of leadership, global learning, and critical pedagogy. An educator, international trainer, and motivational speaker, she recently published Value Creating Education, Teachers' Perceptions and Practices this year, and Global Wisdom, The Antidote to Magical Thinking last year in 2023. We are also joined by Dr. Philip Clayton. So Dr. Clayton is the president of the Institute for Ecological Civilization, which you can find at ecociv.org, and president of the Claremont School of Theology. He received his PhD from Yale University and has taught at many different academic institutions. As a nonprofit leader, Clayton has organized and facilitated international covenants for more than 20 years. He is the author of and editor of several dozen books, including What is Ecological Civilization and The New Possible, Visions for Our World Beyond Crises. And we will also be joined by Dr. Ma Shuang, professor and graduate supervisor of the director of the International Exchange Department of Liaoning University in China. She has served as the Vice Dean of Asia-Australia Business College, the Vice Dean of the College of Comprehensive. She teaches and does research in the areas of China National College English Program, English for Academic Purposes, and translation and cross-cultural communication. Myself, I have a background in experimental psychology, public policy, and recently I am finishing a master's in environment development and peace from the University for Peace. And I am also joined by a fellow UPeacer as my co-moderator, so Ms. Sifan Jiang, who currently works as an ecosystem service team program associate at Windrock International. She is a dedicated sustainability professional specializing in ESG reporting, equipped with dual master's degrees from the University for Peace and Johns Hopkins University. So Sifan is good at financial analysis and environmental research. So thank you all for joining us. I am going to hand the microphone now to Sifan, who will get us started with the first question.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Median, for this introduction. And it's great to join this webinar again. So I really look forward to today's conversations, and I have seen so many experts from different areas that joining this webinar. So let's go to our first question today. So the first question is, what does the term ecological civilization mean? What are the efforts being done towards this aspiration? So Professor Clayton, you have been working on this for several years. Can you share your thoughts on what ecological civilization means and some example on how the Institute for Ecological Civilizations have been working with this narrative over the years? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sifan, and welcome to all of you from around the world as scholars and leaders and activists wherever you are now. I especially want to welcome the board members from EcoCiv Lee Song and Miriam Vilela, who are my bosses. So I'm glad that they're here. The notion of ecological civilization we first find in Russian scholars in the early 1990s. It begins to emerge in Chinese publications around 1993. And that's the place where it grows and develops the strongest for over a decade. It becomes part of the platform of the Chinese Communist Party in 2007 and the constitution of CCP in 2012. And it is now built into the constitution of the People's Republic of China as of about 2017. So think about the two words in the phrase, ecological and civilization. Ecology is an amazing science, a fairly new science. It insists that we never think of any organism, animal, or even culture in isolation. Ecology is the science of interconnection and interdependence par excellence. It always asks us to look at ecosystems and to see how each part is related to the others and how they depend on each other to be successful. An ecological mindset is a mindset of interdependence, of mutual belonging, of helping, sometimes competing, within a single system. Civilization means culture in the biggest sense. A civilization is a way of living and talking and thinking, patterns of art and learning and government and ethics that can run hundreds, or in the case of China, for example, thousands and thousands of years. Right now, the planet is dominated by one of the most colonizing cultures in the world, Western or Northern European culture. For the last 500 years, they have reached out to control other countries. It's been a culture, I can say, a civilization of dominance. But if we move to an ecological civilization, we move beyond that battle and begin to recognize all cultures and languages as interdependent. It's funny that the part of the world that has most resisted ecological civilization is the West. People often tell me, this is a contradiction. How could you possibly have an ecological civilization? I've never heard that phrase in the East with my friends in China, in South Korea, or in Japan. And I think we'll hear more about that in this panel. The harmony of ecology and society is basic. For Confucian thought, under Tian, under heaven, we have society or culture, and we have nature, and they exist in a complete interdependence. The goal is a harmony between them. So why I'm excited about this panel is that it allows us to learn from the traditions of the East. Ecological civilization as the future we seek for, and yet rooted in the traditional practices of many Eastern cultures, and actually rooted in many indigenous practices around the world as well. I also work with the Institute for the Postmodern Development of China, which has been working for 25 years to bridge East and West together. And I want to emphasize how much that bridging work is basic for what I think the four of us here, as well as the Earth Charter movement, are seeking to do. President Xi now calls it the second integration. So we integrate the contemporary world, its problems, its technology, and so forth, with traditional Chinese ways of living. In South Korea, to retain the Confucian and Buddhist and shamanist parts of traditional Korean society, while Korea is one of the global leaders culturally and technologically, likewise with Japan. So think of ecological civilization here as I close as a combination of future, past, and present. It asks us to imagine a future outcome that we need on our planet to survive, to see our ancient traditions as our resources, our riches, and then in the present to begin to create a roadmap for the transition. Every sector needs to make this transition. Education first, we'll talk about, but also food and agriculture, jobs, cities, transportation. Ecological civilization is nothing less than complete systems change. And I think I want to say in the end, it does not have to be a vague dream, a utopian idea. Ecological civilization is actually an organizing principle for action. So the Institute for Ecological Civilization works in concrete changes, but always in the horizon of a transformed way of humans living on the planet in harmony with animals. In short, I believe this term, its name is hope. It's the hope for the future of our planet as integrated, harmonious, and combined deeply with nature. Thank you, Sivan.
Thank you, Professor Clayton. And I think it's really important to have the word hope in our mind, especially you have talked about the past, present, future, and also like different cultures. We elaborate on different cultures on our ecological civilization. So I think that's really good. And I saw Professor Ma is here. So Professor Ma, we just had the first question. What does the term ecological civilization mean? And what are the efforts being done towards this aspiration? And from your perspective, what is your understanding of an ecological civilization? Can you also briefly share with us the decisions the government of China has made about this and what has followed that?
Okay. Thank
Hello.
you, Stefan. Hello. Sorry, I was late. I had a access problem just now. Good thing is that I finally make it. Thank you very much for your patience. Good morning from China. Well, this is a good question. I believe that no other government in the world today, other than the Chinese government, would have made such a commitment to building or is to determine to establish the eco-civilization. It turns out that in China, ecological civilization has almost become a household term, which means almost everyone has heard of it or known about it. The importance of ecological civilization is so high in today's China that when viewed vertically, it has never been seen before in the long Chinese history. And horizontally, it is unlikely to be attached such a big importance in other countries or by other governments in the world. Then you may wonder what it exactly means in China by ecological civilization. Well, in fact, ecological civilization is being used by the Chinese government to provide a coherent conceptual framework for adjustment to development that meets the 21st century challenges. The term was first proposed in 2007 and has been increasingly emphasized and adopted as a goal of development in China since 2012. It is a way to sustainable development with the emphasis placed on political and cultural factors, as well as on defining new relationships between man and nature, and that would benefit human beings as a whole. And it also is within the eco-environmental bounds of the planet Earth. Here we say that human beings have gone through three major stages of civilizations. The first stage is primitive civilization, and the second one is agricultural civilization, and the third one is industrial civilization. Of course, we can't say that we have left behind the third stage by now, but it doesn't stop us from advocating the new stage of ecological civilization in the hope that the two kinds of civilizations parallel currently, and that ecological civilization will replace industrial civilization in the future, or maybe just in the near future. Well, in my eyes, ecological civilization is a social form with a basic purpose of harmonious coexistence, green and healthy development and sustained prosperity between man and nature, man and man, and also man and society, which made a virtuous cycle when put together. Just now I heard Professor Clinton also mentioned harmony, kind of a harmonious coexistence, something like that, and hope. And I can't agree more. We can also, ecological civilization in the narrow sense refers to the civilization that treats the nature in a more civilized way. It suggests that we are concerned with the climate change, environmental protection, and the biological diversity, and all that involves the nature. It can be generalized by a very popular saying in Chinese, 绿水青山就是金山银山, which means lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets. However, in a broad sense, in my perspective, ecological civilization refers to a new type of civilization that goes far beyond the physical meaning of environmental ecology and reaches a much higher level, which also emphasizes the harmonious world with peace, respect, justice, well-being, happiness, etc., which perfectly echo the ideas proposed by the Earth Charter, I think. So since the 18th CPC National Congress in 2012, the party's Central Committee with President Xi Jinping at its core has taken seriously the issue of environmental protection from a global and strategic standpoint, introducing a series of new thoughts, strategies, and requirements for the construction of ecological civilization. And I think that is my understanding about the current practice in China about civilization, ecological civilization. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ma. And yeah, it's very important for us to understand the core value of ecological civilization, that's harmony and also coexistence between human and other creatures. Especially in recent years, China has done lots of stuff trying to promote ecological civilization, and we have seen some progress over the years. And I will pass the microphone to Amanda for the second question.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Dr. Clayton and Dr. Meshwan, for giving us that context of what is an ecological civilization from two different perspectives. So now we want to discuss this link between ecological civilizations and education. How do you imagine the kind of education that fosters ecological civilizations? So we want to know, and people in the chat are also asking, what are some specific examples of what is currently being done or what could be done towards this vision in the context of education? So we're going to start with Dr. Woo-tak Chung. Within the context of your work, Dr. Chung, that you have been doing, how does education fall on the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, more specifically on education for sustainable development and global citizenship education in the context of higher education, how does that contribute, or how could it contribute to the building of an ecological civilization?
Good morning, everybody. I'm in Seoul. Good evening. Good afternoon. It's my great honor to be invited this very important topic, ecological civilization. Thank you very much, Professor Clayton and Professor Ma, introduced on the concept of ecological civilization. I will share my PPT. Yeah. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah. I will talk about education on SDGs, including ESD and global citizens education for building ecological civilization. I'm teaching at Gyeonggi University, several universities in Korea, but before, long time, I was in UNESCO. My final position was director of UNESCO APSEU. And now I'm also the Korean representative of Global Partners for Education. My presentation based on my experience in UNESCO APSEU, as a director of the Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding. In this center, my mission, my work was to incorporate global citizens education into post-MDG, that is now the SDG. So successfully incorporate global citizens education into SDG. As you know well, now we have education for sustainable development and global citizenship. In SDG 4, 4 is education, 4.7. So we have 2 education in SDG. This is, I believe, this is only one target of among 169 target of SDG, but I believe this is a foundation to achieve SDG, most important education. So now I will link between education and ecological civilization. To achieve ecological civilization, we have to have sustainability, the education for sustainable development. Also, we have to have a global citizenship. That's why global citizenship education. Those 2 education is foundation to build ecological civilization. Now I'm teaching Gyeonggi University 2 courses. One is global citizenship education. Second one is introduction to SDG. I'm teaching 2 courses. So I published 2 textbooks in Korean, global citizenship education and SDGs and SDGs. I'm very sorry, this is only Korean, it's not English, but I hope I will translate it into English and publish it in English version. My suggestion, number 1 is global citizenship education and education for sustainable development. More bigger concept. The umbrella concept is education on sustainable development goals, SDG education. So in this SDG education, we teach not only the 17 goals, but also 169 target and more than 200 indicator. This is a target of SDG goal 17. This is a target of SDG 16. Each goal has a target and indicator. So we have to introduce this target and indicator to the students. My second suggestion is today the crisis is climate crisis. That's why international organization UN emphasized the importance of climate change education. Last year, I attended Dubai COP28 meeting. In this meeting, I was what is kind of a shock. There are so many participants. Those 2 weeks, 80,000 participants from all over the world. But this is my feeling. There are very few educators in this COP28 meeting. So after coming back to my country, I thought, why so very few small number of educators join in this what COP28? So we education side, we don't have any deep connection with those COP and climate change education. That's why ecological civilization, this is a more broad concept. We can connect it to the climate change, what community and education. So this is my own understanding. We have so many education today. As you see, we have so many education. And also we add one, global citizenship education. And also we have another one, education for sustainable development. I believe it, all those, the umbrella education should be education for SDGs. Education for SDGs, I believe this is the same education, climate change education. For what? I believe to build ecological civilization. This is my understanding on ecological civilization and education. In coming 2030, we will adopt post-SDGs. We don't know what the name will be. In current SDGs, there's no items like this. That's why I'm thinking we have to have a new global goal on outer space and AI and science and technology, culture and art. And I believe currently we have ESDN Global Citizenship Education in SDG 4.7. We have a more elaborated, more advanced concept, such as a planetary, global, or eco-citizenship, or I don't know the terminology, but we have to develop new concept, combine those two. For what? I believe the ultimate goal should be building ecological civilization in this small global village. This is my idea. That is my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chung. Yes, I know last year, for the past 2 years, we were halfway there to our deadline of 2030. Now we have about 6 years left, and it's really good to look ahead and see what's missing and what we are going to be included. And we can already start including before moving on to the next agenda, because we know what needs to be done for an ecological civilization. So to hear more examples, we are now going to call on Dr. Maria Guajardo. So Dr. Maria, you recently published a book on value creating education. Congratulations. Based on this work and the work that you have been doing with global citizenship education, can you share with us how all of this can contribute to the building of an ecological civilization? In other words, how is your work linked to ecological civilizations? And if you could briefly also explain what value creating education is and global citizenship education for those of us who are new to these terms.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And a big thank you also to my co-panelists and to Miriam for bringing us all together. So let me begin with that latter question. What is value creating education? I would suggest to you that it involves nurturing the capacity in students to create value and finding meaning in one's own existence and to contribute to the well-being of others. This promotes teaching learners how to develop into informed global citizens. So our goal is to be able to nurture responsibility, a sense of agency, and praxis. The book was designed to contribute towards the possibility of imagining a yet to be realized transformative approach that looks beyond a majority Western perspective, basing this work now on principles of empathy, hope, as Dr. Clayton also suggested, dialogue, critical consciousness, and social justice development. So included in the book are case studies based on learning spaces from around the world, connecting to value creating education and beginning to connect to transformative education. So where does this concept come from? So value creating education has its roots in the concept of value creating as put forward by Japanese educator Tsunasaburo Makiguchi in the early 1900s. His work was then furthered by Japanese Buddhist philosophers and peace activists Josei Toda and Daisaku Ikeda. The underlying question that surfaces in the educator's narratives and it stretches throughout the entire book is how can teaching and learning fundamentally enrich the lives of our students? So two big questions that we're addressing and exploring. First, how can educators envision the role of value creating education? What does it look like? And second, how do educators allow value creating education to thrive in these learning spaces? However, I would suggest to you, but the most important person is the educator themselves. So how do we allow value creating education to emerge through our own presence? And so to look at this more specifically, I just want to pick up on one element of value creating education, and that is the element of dialogue. What is the purpose of dialogue? What is the process and how do we actually practice this? Because the true practice of dialogic learning is transformational. It connects to one's critical consciousness as it seeks to understand one's own experiences and the experiences of others. It allows us to bring out the best in ourselves through our personal effort and positive engagement. So Daisaku Ikeda emphasized dialogue for the 21st century, and he based it on this perspective of humanism and these three virtues of courage, wisdom, and compassion. Bottom line, dialogue is transformative. It is complex, it's dynamic, and it requires inner preparation. So essential elements of it requires deep listening, respect, commitment, and a shared responsibility. So I would just encourage you to understand that this moves beyond transactional conversation. Dialogue is not ping pong. You talk, I talk, you talk, I talk. No, 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 no. Dialogue is relational. It's about individuals recognizing that we do not exist in isolation, but in relationship with others. At the end of the day, dialogic learning is a process of becoming more human. How do we become those human beings that respect the earth, that have that sense of civilization at a higher level? So through this process of learning, unlearning, and relearning, dialogic learning allows us to reflect and then act critically to transform our reality. So founded in critical pedagogy, dialogic learning does not exist in a vacuum. It requires responsibility. Connecting to critical consciousness, it challenges us to move students out of their state of passivity to become active participants in their learning experience. So through this work, we're developing agency, and the book captures examples of professional development, classroom instruction, how this agency is emerging. So actively training students in dialogue to learn how to listen, to understand, build trusting relationships. This all strengthens the learning community. I'll never forget, someone said to me, curriculum by itself does not transform human beings. It's the relationship that we have with our teacher, with one another. No one has ever said, my 5th grade curriculum was transformative. I am who I am because of 5th grade math. No, no, no. Individuals will say, my 3rd grade teacher touched my heart and my life. So I would say that global citizenship education emerges through value creating education because VCE breathes life into these concepts of global citizenship, these concepts of inner transformation through dialogic learning. We want to be able to engage with an appreciation for each learner's unique qualities. And so through the lens of value creating education, teachers can direct learners through towards an ethically minded society, guiding learners towards compassionate interpretations of these fundamental global challenges that we've already heard spoken of in China, Korea, and throughout the world. So it is about faith in human potential, critical thinking, peace, and social fairness. These become the bridge to global citizenship education. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Guajardo. And it's very important to have dialogues between even different generations as well as people from different countries. So I totally agree with your idea that we need to use education to bridge the gaps. And the next question is for Dr. Ma, from the perspective of the institution of higher education in China, such as Liaoning University, where you are. Can you share how universities in China have been aligning with the government's policies and decisions to contribute towards the building of an ecological civilization? In other words, how is Liaoning University getting organized to do this, and how do you see the role the Earth Charter can play in this?
Okay, okay, thank you, Sifan. Between 2015 and 2018, the government of China made the idea of contributing to building ecological civilization a priority. However, there is a need to clarify the implications of that to higher education. After all, ecological civilization is not just a slogan. If we want to turn this abstract and intangible concept into practical and tangible reality, we need to do something. We are committed to the government's call to continue to ecological civilization. At Liaoning University, we have taken on the task of exploring ways to consistently continue to the building of an ecological civilization as directed by our government, as well as to bring the SDGs and the key UNESCO education agendas to our university with a whole and integrated institution approach. In other words, we have embarked in a process to reorient our teaching, our education, and our research engagement with our local community in such a way to be aligned and contribute to the above. We understand that the role of higher education institutions in the current times is key in helping the learners understand the major challenges humanity faces and in having the necessary knowledge, values, and skills to address it. We want not only to be in the forefront of this, but also to inspire and influence efforts to be undertaken by other institutions in our region and even in the world. In this context, we have started the process of engaging our faculty in professional development opportunities to enhance their knowledge and the capacity to incorporate sustainability, climate change, and global citizenship education in our programs and the teaching practice. So far, more than 60 professors or educators from across disciplines and more than 500 students from Liaoning University have completed the training programs in education for sustainable development and the young leadership for sustainability, respectively, which were offered by the Earth Charter Center on Education for Sustainable Development. But our plan is to increase that. To help this process, in 2023, we actually established a collaboration with UNESCO Chair on Education for Sustainable Development with the Earth Charter and created an Earth Charter Education Center located at Liaoning University to become a lighthouse in our university in this effort of reorienting our work with the lens of whole institution approach. This new Liaoning University Center, which brings together faculty from different disciplines, will be in charge in implementing our proposed UNESCO goals. we want to make a bridge in research and education on that intersection between ecological civilization and ESD. We have already started doing research on ESD and its links with ecological civilization and professional development on ESD. Liaoning University has long been concerned about issues such as climate change, environmental protection, equality and justice, ecological civilization, global citizenship, etc., and attaches great importance to infusing these topics and world challenges in our curriculum and a part of our research work. We have in our School of Environment, the Institute of Environmental Economy, which has its own international academic journal, Digital Economy and Sustainable Development. According to the incomplete statistics in recent years, the Liaoning University faculty have about 800 Chinese papers and 160 English papers addressing these themes, published by Chinese or international academic journals, which include Liaoning University's graduate and doctoral students' dissertation, which indicates our education of our students in this kind of fields. In addition, Liaoning University is increasingly engaging in the sustainable development goals, which is now influencing the transformations of our university is undergoing. We have integrated the SDGs into our development plans. We have also working on incorporating ESD, GCED, and ecological civilization across our curriculum, as well as in co-curriculum and ex-curriculum activities and teaching, teacher education, and so on. We also make international collaboration in a central part of a vision of our university, as we want to build bridges with institutions and other in other countries and regions. Over the past few years, we have been conducting exchanges students programs in collaboration with universities in Japan, Russia, South Korea, Mongolia, and develop cooperation and exchange programs with 112 universities and research institutions in 28 countries. So these are also what we have been doing in the past years to contribute to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wang. You can definitely tell from that impressive list of actions that Liaoning University is taking a whole institutional approach. I was a facilitator for the youth courses, the leadership, sustainability, and ethics courses that the students from Liaoning University participated in, and I learned a lot from these students. I hope as much as they learned from the course itself and from the interaction with the other participants from the other countries. And they inspired me to take Mandarin classes. I have my first exam tomorrow, and I am thank you. And I am so excited to one day visit Liaoning University and other universities in China and just see this transformation for myself. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Philip, still on this question of the link between ecological civilizations and education, we would also like to hear your thoughts on what is that kind of education that we need to foster ecological civilizations? What role do you think the Earth Charter can play in this? And do you have any examples as well of efforts that are being made in this direction?
That's a great question, Amanda. And I'd like to start with the central idea, which is the Earth Charter expresses the values and ecological civilization expresses the goal. Imagine we hold one in each hand and you'll be able to find the pathway from the present to this future that we long for. So think about it. The Earth Charter expresses the global values. You know, the peoples of the world came together, what is it now, 30 years, more than 30 years ago, to formulate the fundamental values of protecting nature and of living in harmony with her. There's no other global document that has so much input over so many years to formulate the deepest values of harmony with nature. An ecological civilization, as it's been developed mostly in China for many decades, beginning at about the same time actually, expresses the destination. Here's where we head to, here's where we're going. This is what we seek to be, what we seek to become. And so together with one in each hand, we can draw the map from getting from here to there, from getting from the unsustainable modern ecological civilization. It's not hard. It's not, as we say, rocket science. These are things that we know from the ecological sciences. We know from traditional lifeways, indigenous lifeways, Confucian recommendations of values. And this, I think, is where education becomes central. This May, for example, we're hosting the 17th International Forum for Ecological Civilization, led by Dr. Wang Zhe and Dr. Fan Meijun. That means since 2006, without a break, the Eco Forum has been bringing together Asian scholars and Western participants to rethink education. It's broadcast simultaneously in Chinese, Korean, and English, so all are welcomed in. Last year, it was downloaded, portions were downloaded 12 million times in China. So there's a lot of interest in eco-education. So what is this education for ecological civilization? I think I can say it in 3 simple points. The first one is eco-citizens, as Professor Chung put it, or I would say eco-persons. It isn't just the head, it isn't just the facts, it's a transformation of what we are from a person of consumption, of selfishness, of isolation, of alienation, from the earth, to an eco-person, where the ecosystem, the interconnection between us is basic. Postmodern education means, is the second point, postmodern education. What does that mean? It means not memorizing facts, but forming these eco-persons. Not value neutral, as the West has said education should be, but creating value, as Maria just emphasized beautifully in her talk and in her book. Not competing, but cooperating. So learning together. These are the ancient ways of learning in many of the traditions, traditional schools of the East. And finally, a postmodern education is not abstract, but it's hands-on. It means participating in the world. So education for ecological civilization is first, eco-persons, second, postmodern forms of education, and third, at the very center of this kind of education is an ecological worldview based on the values of the Earth Charter and then put into action in every sector of our contemporary world. I'll close this with 2 quick examples. There's a Chinese eco-village, the Sun Village, where people learn to farm in traditional Chinese ways. And in between, as it used to be in Confucian villages, they study the patterns of ecological civilization. They study the transition from modern to postmodern. They integrate, as President Xi says, the traditional Chinese life ways and the contemporary ways. In our classes in California on ecological civilization, it's similar. The students work, sometimes during class, we take them out to the gardens where they're growing their own food. Some have chickens in their backyard. Some have fruit trees, some do vegetables. There's so many chickens that enough eggs, not only for the small community, but they can be given away. There on the sidewalk, we have boxes of food and vegetables where the neighbors can come by and get some as well. In the classes, students study examples of transforming society. They form a supportive community, and then with that support, each one engages in a specific project for transforming their village or their city. So in closing, eco-education is about rediscovering harmony between the body and the mind, guided by the heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Clayton. And that's really interesting to hear about the terms of eco citizens and also eco persons, especially, Earth Charter is a very, very useful tool to help people build knowledge of ecological civilization by its 4 pillars. So, and also Earth Charter has lots of classes and webinars about ecological civilization. So that's very useful. And really, thank you for the experts for your answers to the questions. And we have seen lots of people, they're sharing their thoughts in the comment chat, in the chat. And we do have like a very interesting comments from Ellen, who said, why so few educators at the conferences? And Malik also gave some many reasons for the gap between educator and lobbies of industries and investors, business targets, conflict of interest, etc. So we would like to hear your thoughts about why there are so few educators at the who are focusing on ecological civilization and why they don't really attend these conferences, and how to promote more educators to engage in this kind of activities. So I would like to invite Professor Utak Chang, and we would like to hear your thoughts on this question first.
Yeah, as I presented in my PPT, when I attended last year, COP28, there are very few educator, teachers, students attended those quite big international events. So I think education community we have to change our mind. So narrow-minded. UNESCO organized Transforming Education Summit in UN only for educators. Only educators attend. But in COP28, the comparative perspective, there are so many experts on climate change. There are government officials. There are so many private companies. So many private companies attended in those COP, and there's activists, very diverse groups, very diverse stakeholders. So I suggest education, we have to invite not only the education community, but also the other stakeholders. We have to invite the student, parents, and companies or the international organization. Education international organization only have a very narrow mind, UNESCO and those UNICEF, but UNFCCC, they have what very wide global networks. So we have to attend COP, even though that COP is climate change. We have to go there and we have to talk about to achieve to prevent climate crisis. Education is most important goal. We have to do that. We have to have some demonstration or movements or something events in that place. We have to use the other events, and also the Earth chart is very important mechanism. We have to invite more very diverse interest group into education. I fully agree with you, Professor Clayton. Earth chart provide the value, and our ultimate goal is ecological civilization. How to go there? The education is only the ladder to go there. So my conclusion is educator, teacher, students, education community should be more aggressive than before. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chung. Yes, we're talking about connectedness, and everyone has such interesting perspectives. So we really need to expand the conversation at these events and in these spaces. Maria, Dr. Guajardo, what are your thoughts on everything that we've been discussing on tonight? What you have heard from the other panelists? We want to hear from you again.
As we keep centering on education, I ask myself the question, is it a revolution that's required to be able to attain the goals that ecological civilization is framing for us? Or is it a renaissance? And I would ask us to consider the pairing of these two words. My own understanding of a renaissance is the emergence. You grab the value of what is there and you continue to transform and grow and co-create. No one is left behind in a renaissance. People will come kicking and screaming, but everyone will eventually be carried up by the tide, the power of water carrying us forward. And so I would suggest that as you think about these two words, will you participate in a revolution or will you participate in a renaissance? And I'm not sure that they're mutually exclusive. What I've heard in this hour is that disruption is needed. We need to disrupt how we have been doing what we do. In the absence of disruption, we will become experts at repetition. And so this vehicle of disruption is truly within our bearing. It's within our means. As decision makers, what choices will we present? And I agree with Dr. Chung, we have to be interdisciplinary. We have to be talking to those that we would never speak to. And so I'm just going to close by saying, unless we are willing to engage in dialogue with the person that is most different from us, we will remain in silos that Dr. Clayton has spoken of, these silos that do not benefit the greater good. So join me, choose. I'm not going to suggest to you which one you should choose, but today I'm going with that renaissance. I want the co-creation with my new friends and colleagues on the screen, with those of you in attendance. Let's step into this space. Let's step in and decide that we will do better because we want better.
Thank you so much, Maria. You have been inspiring many of us tonight, all of us tonight, and inspiring a lot of commentary in the chat. So for example, Kiyoshi Akasu from Japan is commenting that he says, I always wondered if global citizenship education or education for the SDGs would employ the same curriculum for everyone, potentially leading to a monolithic culture and neglecting diversity. However, Dr. Guajardo pointed out that it's not the curriculum, but the teachers themselves who make education transformative. So the relationship is important. And so I am going to call on Ma Shuang. If you have anything to respond to this, what do you think about everything that we've been talking about for this past question, and what Kiyoshi's reminding us of, and Maria is reminding us of the people, eco-persons, as Dr. Clayton said. What do you think about this idea that it's the teachers who are making education transformative? Ma Shuang?
Of course, I like Maria's ideas. And I think she is not just describing a kind of just education. I think it's a kind of like poet, kind of very poetic things. And I'm quite affected by her enthusiasm. And I think if a teacher can educate students in that way, it will be very, very effective, and the students will be influenced a lot. Okay, so yeah, well, I benefited a lot from this webinar. Do learn a lot from you guys. Actually, our students learned a lot from the education for ESD programs and the LSE programs, the teachers, the students, and you actually, I mean, the Earth Charter programs make our teachers and students broaden their horizon. And that was a very different way to look at the world. And we got that kind of education and inspired a lot from the facilitators, even from your work ethics, your spirit. And I think that kind of influence is not just a kind of doctrine, and it's kind of a human influence, heart to heart, kind of heartfelt gratitude from our students and teachers. So we do think this is a very good way. And this kind of communication, I mean, between educators from different parts of the world can share their learning, their feelings, and work together to make a better world, to make greater good, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wang. And Philip, before I ask you to also jump in and respond to this thought, I'll read a comment from Paul Shamian, who said in the chat, in Thailand, I have been working with local governments on education and integrating climate change in the school curriculum. It's called eco-schooling by emphasizing biology, ecological services, and energy. Thank you so much, Paul. And Philip, so I'll ask you to intervene, and I'll also read a question from Deborah Ellen, who's joining us from Guam. So Debbie says, how can we break away from or get educational leaders to break away from the types of set curriculums, such as where they have each week and lesson outlined for each year, in order to incorporate ESD and the Earth Charter and the ecological civilizations?
Amanda, could you read Joyce's comment that came right after Deborah? Because they fit together
Yes.
beautifully.
Oh, perfect. Yes, thank you, Philip. And Joyce says, we need the inspiration of falling in love with nature in addition to information. We will protect which we love. We are co-creators with the universe. Thank you, Joyce.
That's a great dialogue between those three participants. And I want to be very, very concrete, and this is probably my last comment, and to not get abstract and all theoretical, because these are things we can do. And I want to start with Joyce and then kind of move outward from there. So 3 simple things. Number 1, love nature. I had the privilege of working with Jane Goodall for a number of years in a project with UNESCO in the past. And Jane Goodall is an incredible lover of nature and chimpanzees in particular. And she taught me, as she teaches children all over the world through Roots and Shoots, she says, love a single patch of nature. She said, no matter where you live in an informal community in Africa or outside Mumbai or wherever you might be, you can see between even the cracks of the concrete a flower growing through. Love a single patch of nature. And she said, unless you deeply love one person, you can't love humanity as a whole. So unless you love and care for one small part of nature, you can't love nature as a whole. So I'm with Joyce. First is love nature. And second is build community. We heard before about interdependence. You can't do it as an isolated individual trying to bring about ecological civilization. It's a community term. So we grow gardens. What about growing a community of friends and allies? Start small and then build your community. My teacher, John Cobb, says we can have communities built of communities built of communities. It's communities all the way down. That's also Confucian teaching from Kongte. And so love nature, build community. And the last one is simple, become an activist. Give ecological civilization a street address. Give it a location. Launch a model project. Even if it's small, launch a little project that shows what you mean by loving nature, building community, living out the Earth Charter, and working toward that goal of a genuinely ecological, sustainable world that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip. I will pass the microphone to Sifan.
Hi. Yeah, thank you, Professor Clayton, for your final summary for this webinar. And Professor Utak Chang, do you want to share your thoughts on this webinar?
Yeah, thank you. As I told you, I believe this is my experience, almost 36 years in UNESCO. UNESCO is so gentle, and educator is too gentle. We have to change our what culture and behavior. We have to make a bigger voice, and also we have to make kinds of movements. And so I suggested as my final message, we need to make a voice and movement. We have to have a partnership and networking. Only one person cannot make voices. And so we, like this, Earth Chart International and today's dialogue, we have to talk together, and we have to have some same goal, and we have to work together. This is very powerful. So I suggest this is very, very critical and important gathering and dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chung. Thank you for joining us this evening and morning. I am going to call on Dr. Mashwang next, and we are still keeping an eye on the chat if anyone has any final thoughts or last minute questions, but it's been very inspiring to hear how these different perspectives and these different examples have blended in this conversation. So Dr. Mashwang, could we hear your final thoughts?
My final thoughts, okay. So in short, my understanding about this is ecological civilization does not mean that we can waste food, water, land, etc. as we want, simply because I'm rich or I have money. I have to let my students know that, or just I can afford it, then I can do anything. That's not it, and nor is it that I can do anything harmful to the environment because I have power or I'm in a higher position. I can, get rid of the other bad influence, but I can do anything as I will. Nor is it that large countries can exploit and destroy the resources of small countries at will. So on the contrary, it is a kind of personality, a kind of consciousness, a kind of self-awareness, and more importantly, a kind of respect and a kind of foresight and insight for the sake of our future generations. But how to acquire these qualities, or how to become an eco person in Professor Clinton saying just now, he mentioned that eco person, how to become an eco person now. I think the answer is education. So we educators have the responsibility and the obligation to help students establish a correct view of ecological civilization, train them to become global citizens with vision and insight, not that short-sighted, nearsighted, like Dr. Chang just mentioned. So We also look forward to these people to passing these qualities on from one generation to another. Only by doing so can a much brighter future is expected. We can have blue oceans and a green earth eternally. So this is also where ecological civilization and the Earth Charter are completely compatible and converge. Therefore, let's join hands to create a beautiful and a lovely common home, the Earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meshwang. Yes, thank you for reminding us that we do have this common home with this common destiny, and for bringing the lessons that we can learn from China and this idea of respecting our natural resources as well. Okay, so last week we celebrated International Women's Day, and we do have a question in the chat, some last minute questions. And Valentina Ortiz Suarez is asking, what is the role of women in ecological civilizations and also gender in general? So we haven't heard from Maria yet, and for your final thoughts. So if you would like to also answer this question in your final intervention. So what do you think, as Valentina is asking, what is the role of women in an ecological civilizations and gender? Valentina asks. And then, of course, if anyone, I know a lot of you have already given your final thoughts, but if any other panelists want to jump in after that, please let us know. So we'll go on to Maria.
I'll keep it short. Amanda and Valentina, thank you so much for that question. I am convinced that we cannot accomplish our goals or live true to the values of the Earth Charter if we silence, diminish, or exclude 50% of the population. If we're serious about this work, we will be inclusive with a sense of justice. Representation is not enough. We have to be able to unlearn our familiarity with the old definitions of power, relearn new definitions that allow you, me, the 20-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 70-year-old to sit together. We've heard about intergenerational work. I would challenge us to practice it. We need to be able to step into that space. As Paulo Freire said, it was about praxis. It's taking theory, connecting to action, and living that. And so, Valentina, thank you for the question. The work cannot happen if 50% of the population is silenced.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you, everyone. We've heard a lot of interesting terms, a lot of different examples. And in our speakers today, if it was your first time hearing about them or hearing about their organizations, I'm sure that from listening to this conversation, you can tell that they're actually walking the talk and doing what they have been saying today. So thank you all for sharing in just a short amount of time and in sharing this space. We have learned a lot, and I think you have all inspired everyone to go on and continue contributing to not only the SDG 4 on quality education, but which also contributes to all the other SDGs, thinking about the next agenda that we will work on as a planetary community, and of course, using the Earth Charter principles, having these pillars that the Earth Charter gives us as a document as well to guide us towards these ecological civilizations. Thank you all so much for your comments in the chat. Rolla Lewis has told us about her graduates at the California State University who worked with kindergarten through 12th grade to create changes in schools that would bring about the change they wanted, not necessarily directed from above. So this is what in the chat. The name of the book is Lifescaping Project, Action Research and Appreciative Inquiry in Bay Area Schools. So thank you so much, Rolla. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joyce, for your comments. Sorry, it's a very windy evening in Costa Rica, so I think my internet is also becoming unstable now. And I'll leave you with another beautiful comment from Joyce, who says, women can help restore the feminine aspect of divinity in our theology, which is nurturing and embracing all of life. Gaia, Mother Earth. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Remember, this is the third of one series this year, starting in November of last year on ecological civilizations. This third webinar focused on the link with education. So we've had other definitions from other speakers in the past telling us what an ecological civilization is from their context and giving other examples as well. You can find those on the Earth Charter International website and Earth Charter International YouTube. And you can always use those resources too. We are heading to Florida in the United States in April this year for the Earth Charter Conference on reimagining education and ecological civilizations. So we hope to see you there as well. And if you cannot join us in person, we will be publishing a lot of information following this meeting. A lot will come out of that as well. So please stay tuned for what is coming and resulting from these conversations that we've had online, but also the conversations that we will be having in person in April this year in Florida at Rollins College. So thank you all so much. As I mentioned, you can learn more about the speakers and search for their organizations as well if you head to our website and find this event under our events page. And yes, so we really appreciate you all, and we will be sharing this recording with you soon.